Well, we shot it down, but not before the bumbling Biden administration once again got egg all over its face for all the world to see. We're going to see the latest on even more balloons being spotted. We're going to see what's really going on behind all of this. And make sure to stick with me to the very end of this video when I'll reveal why this may indeed be the tipping point, guaranteeing the end of the Biden regime. You are not going to want to miss this. As I'm sure you're all well aware of by now, the Chinese surveillance balloon that was hovering over the United States at an altitude of 60,000 feet was finally shot down off the coast of South Carolina. The balloon is, of course, raising more and more questions for the Biden administration, most particularly, how the heck did we allow something like this to happen? How did we allow a foreign surveillance balloon to enter into our airspace? And add insult to injury, a second spy balloon was spotted over Latin America over the weekend, belonging to China. China admitted that. And now there are reports of a third spy balloon hovering over U.S. national security interests, but officials have declined to give any further details. So what on earth is going on here? Well, analysts are in wide agreement that this was nothing less than an intentional attempt at humiliating the United States on the international stage. Former special ops analyst and drone expert Brett Velikovich appeared on Fox News arguing that the spy balloon was actually a test by the CCP to demonstrate the weakness of the United States, a test that, under the blithering idiocy of Biden, the United States, of course, fell victim to.
We look weak here, and I really hope these reports of the administration knowing about this and keeping it secret for over a week from the public aren't true. Why does it take an uproar from the public before the administration is going to take decisive action? I mean, this was a test, and we played right into the Chinese long-term strategy of publicly highlighting how weak our response is. They wanted us to find this. The intent of this balloon was so much more than just surveillance. It was about instilling a sense of fear. It was about showing our defenses are vulnerable. And the way this administration responded, China's government has proven just how vulnerable we really are.
Velikovich was certainly not alone. Perhaps the single biggest surprise was a guest on CNN, of all places, claiming that the spy balloon was a giant middle finger sent to the Biden administration.
You're shaking your head.
So look, I think it's I agree. Look, on the military significance, intelligence significance, probably nil. On the geopolitical stage, a little bit embarrassing. We had a 3-story giant middle finger floating across America, courtesy of the Chinese government, right? And I think that's what really it's Americans take umbrage at, right? The notion that the Chinese can come here and just say, kind of F you, we're going to do this, and you can do nothing, right? And I think if the president would have come out early on and had a press conference, like Senator Rubio had said, and said, listen, here's what we know. We've shut off, we've jammed this, they're not collecting anything. We're going to shoot this down when it's safe. Just done a much better job messaging it. On the messaging part, I think America would have been much better off.
And on that same CNN broadcast, Florida Senator Marco Rubio had this to say.
I think what's embedded here is a clear message. It's not a coincidence that this happens leading up to the State of the Union address, leading up to Blinken's visit to China. The Chinese knew that this was going to be spotted. They knew that we were going to have to react to it. They flew it over military installations and sensitive sites right across the middle. I mean, look at the flight path of this thing. It's a diagonal shot right through the middle of the continental United States. And the message embedded in this to the world is we can fly a balloon over airspace of the United States of America, and they won't be able to do anything about it to stop us. They calculated this carefully, with a message embedded in it. And I think that's the part we can't forget here. It's not just the balloon, it's the message they're trying to send the world that we can do whatever we want and America can't stop us.
Now, these are some pretty impressive admissions on the part of CNN that this was indeed yet the latest embarrassment for the Biden administration, coming just a few days before him having to mumble through his State of the Union speech where he slaughters prepositions. But what we have to understand here is that this attempt at publicly humiliating the United States on the international stage actually has a bit of history to it with regard to the Chinese. The Chinese experienced their own humiliation at the hand of Western powers, and now it looks like they want some payback. This is going to blow your mind. But first, gang, make sure to click on that link below and protect yourself and your loved ones from these insane leftist elites by protecting your assets with the timeless value of gold and silver. As you know, patriots over the centuries have always relied on gold and silver to protect their assets during economic storms, and that is where the amazing patriots over at Goldco come in. If you've got $50,000 or more in an IRA, 401k, or savings account, you need to protect those assets from bumbling Biden's insanity with the timeless value of gold and silver. Click on that link below and talk to our good friends over at Goldco. Gang, they are patriots just like us, and they want you to succeed so much that they're offering you up to get this $10,000 in free silver if you open up an account with them. But that is a limited time offer, so don't wait. Click on that link below or visit my special website, turleytalkslikesgold.com. What we have to remember here is that beginning in the middle of the 19th century, China experienced a period that they refer to as the Century of Humiliation. Between 1839 and 1949, China was dominated by foreign powers. This is a time when you're dealing with the so-called Second Opium War and the British Empire and the French Empire, followed by the Sino-French War and then the Sino-Japanese War. It was an utterly tumultuous time for China. It's a time that China ceded mass amounts of territories to the Russian Empire and Hong Kong and the British Empire, and perhaps most consequentially, it's the time it lost Taiwan. It's a universal belief throughout China, most particularly its leadership, that as long as China's economically and militarily weak, it's going to be internationally exploited and mistreated. And so scholars are widely agreed that the Great Humiliation provides a very powerful mythos for the rise of what we're seeing today, which is in effect a renewed imperial China, or what scholars today call a civilization state, where the ancient religions and rituals that gave rise to the world's great civilizations are currently making a massive comeback, as we're seeing, of course, with the rise of Orthodox Russia and Hindu nationalist India, and now a Neo-Confucian China. And so in light of China's 100-year humiliation, they know that they have to dominate their region as a hegemon to ensure such humiliation never happens again. And in many respects, they have very effectively done that. For example, China is Australia's #1 trading partner, making up nearly 40% of their trade. That's more than the United States, Japan, and South Korea combined for Australia. China's economy, of course, has been growing astronomically, and if projections hold, by 2050, its economy will be twice the size of all Western nations combined. And as part of that growth, China's beginning to assert itself militarily. For example, in June of last year, China unveiled its latest addition to its growing blue water navy, an utterly massive new aircraft carrier named the Fujian after a Chinese province. It's China's largest aircraft carrier yet built, and it's widely recognized as a symbol of China's economic and military ascendance. Now, here's the key in all of this. In stark contrast to the reawakening of China as a civilization state, Chinese officials see the West as in an irreversible state of decline. We're declining economically, as already noted. We're declining demographically. At the beginning of the 20th century, remember, Western nations comprised 30% of global population. Today, we're just half of that. And by 2050, we'll be no more than 10%. Nigeria will have over 400 million people, surpass the population of the United States. So we're declining economically, we're declining demographically, and yes, we are declining militarily. This is the unfortunate consequence, at least in part, of that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, a debacle that pundits recognize would indeed signal to the world that America's days of defending nations abroad were over. And while we're certainly supportive of the notion of ending endless wars, remember the United States has been at war 2 out of every 3 years since the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. We've had 7 major military conflicts during that time period, from the first Gulf War to the 70-day bombing of Serbia to the Afghanistan and Iraq campaigns, Syria, Libya, Yemen. So while we're certainly supportive of ending these endless global wars, the humiliation of that Afghanistan withdrawal, coupled with the Taliban picking up where they left off 20 years ago, suggested that the United States had become weak. We weren't just adopting a more isolationist posture out of choice. We were doing it out of necessity because we were in a state of decline that China clearly has publicly noticed. The day after the fall of Kabul, a very controversial piece was published in the Global Times, which is the mouthpiece of the CCP, and it was a message to the DPP, which is the Democratic Progressive Party of Taiwan. They're the ruling party there, and the piece basically stated that the United States was abandoning its allies. The U.S. was a spent force, and the future Taiwan is to be united to China, and there's nothing they can do about it. So what we saw over this weekend with the spy balloon is but the latest in China's rise to power in the Pacific, a rise that they believe entails demonstrating for all the world to see the decline of the West, most particularly the United States. Now, I think the good news here is that more and more people are waking up to just how disastrous the Biden idiocy really is. The latest polls, in fact, show that more Republicans want Trump to run again than Democrats who want Biden to run again. He's that unpopular. So let's hope that this latest international embarrassment is a tipping point so that our 4 years of humiliation can finally come to an end. As always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You'll definitely want to check out my latest video on a woke journalist trying to frame Jordan Peterson saying the Bible was offensive. You're not going to believe what happens next. You're going to love it. So make sure to click on that link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.